पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम् नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तन्न विदुः सुरासुरगणाः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
We continue with chapter 3, Karma Yoga, and here is the essence of the verse 35, the translation and commentary by Maharshi Ji. This is again a very important verse, and so we are just taking this one verse through the whole discourse. श्रेयान् स्वधर्मः विगुणः परधर्मात् स्वनुष्ठितात् स्वधर्मे निधनं श्रेयः परधर्मः भयावहः. Now here is the English translation. Because one can perform it, one's own dharma, though lesser in merit, is better than the dharma of another. Better is death in one's own dharma. The dharma of another brings danger. I repeat again. Because one can perform it, one's own dharma, though lesser in merit, is better than the dharma of another. Better is death in one's own dharma. The dharma of another brings danger. Now, let's deal with this dharma. Let's understand this dharma from the subtlest to the gross, from the level of the being, the self, to the relative, from the absolute to the relative. It's important one understands the whole range of this dharma. Here in this verse, Bhagavan teaches that everyone should live according to the level of his own dharma, for this will ensure steady progress on the path of evolution. Certainly, there are ways to enhance one's progress, but each of them starts by raising the present level and not by abruptly abandoning it. Again, Bhagavan is saying that there should be steady progress on the path of evolution, so one should follow his own dharma, and one should start raising in the present level with this dharma and not by abruptly abandoning it. The teaching of this verse is on its highest level. Let us try to understand what is Swadharma. Swadharma is dharma of the self of who you are, which is absolute bliss consciousness. Then what is Paradharma in this subtlest concept? Paradharma is the three gunas here, which are the basis of all the relative manifestation or the relative field. And here Bhagavan is saying it is better to remain established in the dharma of the self, which is absolute bliss consciousness, than to partake of the dharma of the three gunas and come under the sway of attachment and aversion. This is because when a man is established in his own dharma, the dharma of the self, his activity is carried on under the direct influence of Almighty Nature and enjoys its full support. Whereas, if he partakes of the dharma of another, that is, the dharma of the three gunas, he loses the support and the patronage of the Almighty Nature in cosmic life, and then his activity becomes limited by the limitations of the individual life. Again, try to understand this. So when one is established in his own dharma, the Swadharma, or the dharma of the self, then the activity enjoys the full support of the nature. Whereas, if one partakes the dharma of another, here the dharma of the other or the Paradharma is that of the three gunas. Then one loses this nature's support, the Almighty Nature's support, and then the activity becomes limited by the limitations of individual life. Bhagavan continues, this present teaching being a discourse on Yoga Shastra, it is necessary to consider dharma not only on the level of the relative life, the level of the three gunas and their activity, but also on the level of the being which is devoid of activity. Why is this so? Because the dharma of the self is eternal, whereas the dharma in the relative field has its different values at different levels of activity. So again, the dharma of the self is eternal, while the dharma in the relative field is changing because it has different values at different levels of activity. And life is inclusive of both these types of dharma, the eternal dharma of the unchanging self and the changing states of the dharma on different levels of life in the relative field. Again, try to understand this, that life is inclusive of both types of dharma, the eternal dharma of the unchanging self and the changing states of dharma in the relative field, because the absolute and relative are what constitute the entirety of the so-called life. Here, Bhagavan is again answering all the concerns that Arjuna has shown regarding dharma in verses 40 to 45 of the first chapter. And all his questions about the dharma in these verses has been in the relative field, has been those belonging to the changing aspects of the relative field. Here, Arjuna considered dharma mainly on the level of behavior, on the level of the gross aspect of relative life, but Bhagavan's consideration of dharma comes from the very basis of life, from the level of being, and which is also the basis of the three gunas. So when one considers from this fundamental level of life, from the absolute to the relative, then dharma will provide a solution to any problem at any stage of life's evolution. Now let us try to understand life and its different stages of evolution. Bhagavan says life has different stages of evolution. For the process of evolution to advance, it is necessary that one stage should give rise to the next. And in this process, each successive stage is of vital importance. Bhagavan gives expression to this truth by laying down a principle which has its significance at every level of evolution. And this is what he means when he says, because one can perform it, one's own dharma, though lesser in merit, is better than the dharma of another. Further, there are people at various levels of evolution, and each level has a guiding principle, a standard of its own. The guiding principle of dharma of a higher level will be suitable and practical for that level, but it will not be so for men of lesser development. So Bhagavan emphasizes that a person should go by his own level of consciousness, because only by following that he will make sure of reaching the next stage of evolution. Again, a person should go by his own level of consciousness, because only by following that he will make sure of reaching the next stage of evolution. So far as the process of evolution of life is concerned, one's own dharma is the most suitable, even though it may appear lesser in merit. It seems to appear lesser in merit when compared with the dharma of another. But the true merit of dharma lies in its usefulness in promoting evolution in the most effective manner. Now, dharma evolves through different stages of evolution. At every stage of evolution, there is the dharma. And this dharma is governing that stage, and also it is promoting this present stage to the next stage. So again, life at one stage, when promoted by the dharma of that stage to a higher stage, begins to be governed by the dharma of that higher stage. And this is how, stage by stage, life evolves through the dharma of different stages of evolution. So again, Bhagavan is saying one should go with their level of consciousness or their state of development in the present condition. The comparative merit of the dharma of one's present state may be less than the dharma of a higher state, but its merit in its own place is greater by far. For example, if there is a first grade English reader and a Milton's Paradise, then the first grade English reader certainly seems inferior to Milton's Paradise, but it is more valuable for the student of the first grade because it is more suitable for him and suited to him. Further, if a man were to try to follow a dharma suitable for one of higher development, he would not be able to put it into practice successfully, and so a lot of time and energy gets wasted. And this may go so far when one sees a great loss on the path of his evolution. So Bhagavan is further saying, following his own dharma, if one dies, he would naturally rise to a higher state of life. But if he were to die while trying to practice the dharma of another, he would die dislocated from his own level of development, in utter confusion about the path of his evolution. And so when Bhagavan says, better is death in one's own dharma, the reason what he is giving is that the dharma of another brings danger. So it is evident from this that there is even a greater danger to life than the phenomenon of death itself. And now let us look at what is this danger. Death as such only causes a temporary pause in the process of evolution. Again, death as such only causes a temporary pause in the process of evolution. A pause like this is no real danger to life because with a new body taken after the pause, more rapid progress of life's evolution becomes possible. A greater danger will be something that actually retards the process of evolution. And how is this process of evolution retarded or impeded? In following the dharma of another, one certainly produces some effect in one's life. But it will not have any bearing on one's present level of evolution, for this is solely concerned with one's own dharma. The dharma of another, the paradharma, belongs to a level of evolution different from one's own. Because man has freedom of action belonging to different levels of evolution, so in his freedom of action, he is certainly capable of trying to assume the role of action belonging to different levels of evolution. This means that he is capable of attempting to perform actions suitable to the dharma of another. But if he performs such actions, he loses the continuity of progress on the level from which he could evolve. And this is the greatest danger to life. Yes, one lives life, time goes by, and there may not be much progress on the path of evolution. So again, let us try to understand. All evolution is concerned with one's own dharma. So when one takes on another's dharma, then it is very clear that the dharma of another belongs to the level of evolution different from one's own. Man certainly has the freedom of action, and he certainly is capable of trying to assume the role of action belonging to different levels of evolution. He has this capability. So he can attempt to perform actions suitable to the dharma of another. But by performing such actions, he loses the continuity of the progress in the evolution. And hence the greatest danger is that one may not progress on the path of evolution, and as time goes by and when the death comes, one has not made the necessary progress on the path of evolution. So here again we come back to this dharma in this totality. Bhagavan is again reminding, it is better to remain established in the dharma of the self, which is absolute bliss consciousness, than to partake of the dharma of the three gunas, and then come under the sway of attachment and aversion, the raga and dvesha. The nature's support is maximum when one is established in the dharma of the self, and the nature's support is limited when one is influenced by the three gunas or just remains in the dharma of the three gunas. And so Bhagavan is saying, let not the field of activity usurp the field of the self. Please try to understand. Don't let the activity completely overtake you and abandon the experience of the self and being established in the self. This field of the self and the field of the activity should be forever maintained in their full stature. That means one should not lose contact or connection with the self. Only by maintaining this full stature in the field of the self and the field of the activity can a man naturally live both the dharma of the self and the dharma in the field of activity at every level of evolution. Here, man will live eternal freedom in the midst of all success in the different spheres of life's activity, both individual and social. So this is why it is very important you understand this dharma in its totality. Both the absolute and the relative, or the dharma of the self and the dharma of the gunas. Now let us see what happens when the body of a realized man meets death. So this realized man is the enlightened man. So when his body meets with death and the nervous system finally ceases to function, the self remains established in its own dharma, which is the eternal dharma of being, while the sphere of the three gunas continues in its dharma of continuous change, transforming the dead body into its different component elements. So again, the self remains established in its own dharma, which is the eternal dharma, while the sphere of the three gunas, which is always on the continuously changing dharma, it transforms the dead body into its different component elements. In such a case, death only amounts to the cessation of individual activity, and it leaves the self in its unbounded state of eternal freedom. Then such a death is just a silent declaration of no return to the cycle of birth and death. So here, when Bhagavan says, better is death in one's own dharma, he is not extolling death. He is only establishing a principle of gaining that state of eternal being in which death loses its miserable significance. This is the highest principle and the knowledge of death in one's own dharma, where the activity ceases in the body and it leaves the self unbounded in the unbounded state of eternal freedom. And the dead body then just transforms into its different component elements. Now I will read this verse again. Because one can perform it, one's own dharma, though lesser in merit, is better than the dharma of another. Better is death in one's own dharma. The dharma of another brings danger. Here ends the essence of this verse 35. I will add a few words. Here we understand completely that dharma in its totality is the swadharma in the self, and then the paradharma, the relative, in the relative field, is in the field of the gunas. So in order to live in the totality of this dharma, then one has to be in contact with the being or situated in the being, the self, and perform all the actions. Then you get the maximum nature support. You not only get the maximum nature support and the success and fulfillment, but also your evolution will be natural. Your evolution in different stages will be natural. So at all costs, it is very important that one transcends and one has the experience of the self, this bliss consciousness, and establish the self in the waking, dreaming and sleeping states as the cosmic consciousness, and never lose the touch of the self. And from here to perform all the activities is completely fulfilling the dharma. Because one doesn't have this knowledge and one doesn't have this experience, then one is only living in the field of the gunas, governed by the gunas and the vasana. And so you are influenced by the raga dvesha, created by this vasana, and you are dancing to the tune of this ragadvesha for the entire life and making decisions as to how to live the life, how to work, how to progress, and how to be successful. Ultimately, no matter what one is doing, everyone wants happiness. Everyone wants some ease, and one wants fulfillment and also success. In the relative field, the field of the gunas, then the vasanas express themselves from the very birth. And from a very early age, one shows inclinations towards what one likes and what dislikes. And this is seen as to what their capabilities are and aptitudes, so that you can see that if they are drawn to knowledge, or if they like a certain type of work or a career or a vocation, or if they like arts and music, or they are interested in the higher knowledge and the wisdom of life, we clearly see these traits and these inclinations. It is very important for a parent and a teacher to introduce the children to meditation at a very early age. Normally, Maharshi Ji has given the walking technique at the age of 4 and the sitting technique at the age of 9. So in the schools, if they can meditate together as a group, then this connection, in a very innocent way, connection to the self, connection to this totality, the self of what the child is and the relative aspect of the child, is automatically established. The children immediately connect to the field of this bliss. They experience this bliss immediately, and it is amazing, because it is only when they experience this happiness within themselves, then they are able to perform well in the school and also have happier relationships at home and good growth and development. And the next thing is that when one transcends, then there is expansion in the consciousness. More and more brain becomes conscious. Normally, if they are only using a very small percentage, 1 or 2% of the brain, now the child starts using more and more of the brain. So what does this mean? It means that more of the brain is available to be creative and to be creatively intelligent. And so the child begins to understand its own possibilities and its own potential. Nobody has to tell the child. The child will begin to realize its own potential and possibilities. So naturally the child will rise in its dharma, in its own dharma, attuned to dharma or attuned to the natural laws. And when he does not when he dislikes something or shows aversion, it seems like it is naturally, those are the things which are violating the laws of nature. So he is naturally in the flow of the dharma. The discriminative capacity of the intellect becomes very clear, and when the intellect is established in the self or established intellect, then the child spontaneously begins to recognize what is wrong and what is right, and what is good and what is bad, and he spontaneously begins to understand that this is giving him more happiness and this is producing more success and giving him more possibilities. So naturally, with the help of a parent and the guidance of a teacher, good teacher, then he is able to step into a career or a vocation which is suitable for his dharma and continue in that, so that there is continuity of this natural evolution. So then it becomes easy for him to choose a career and a work that is satisfying, that is fulfilling, and that is also bringing success and financial gains. And he has naturally moved beyond the ragadveshas, which are opposed to the nature. He may be in the ragadvesha, which is aligned to the nature. That means he likes that is some things that are supporting the nature, and he has natural aversion for some things that which are violating the nature. And slowly, with continuing practice, then one rises above these ragadveshas altogether. Now, what I have described for the child and what I have prescribed for the child is equally applicable to every person. If one is living with this totality of the dharma, this Swadharma of the self and the Paradharma of the gunas or the relative field, then one is able to make the choices, because you have the ability to choose, you have the right to choose. The only thing is that you choose according to dharma and not violating the dharma as a principle. When one develops this consciousness, then there is no need to tell yourself that you have to work for the welfare of others, welfare of a society, or the welfare of the family. You automatically have established this connection between you and the nature around, and all the people around you and the nature around you. One has already developed the sensitivity to be kind to people, to be appreciative of their needs, and to do only things that are conducive and bring happiness to himself and to others. Then in this Vedic tradition there are far-reaching effects. One also understands that whatever one is doing is not only affecting him and his family and the people around, but also it is affecting the whole of the environment around, and all the way reaching into the cosmos. Finally, I want to touch on one subject. Nowadays, everyone is concerned about their rights, and they are confused about their duties, and they are confused about this dharma. This dharma on one level is spoken of as duties, kartavya. In the Vedic knowledge, in the Vedic society, there only existed duties. There were no rights, and the duties had to be performed with integrity and with responsibility and trying to live in a cooperative existence and continuously helping and enriching the other. There was really no talk about rights because the whole purpose was to do the duties properly, to do the actions properly, and understanding this dharma to oneself and to others. So one understood that there were duties to be performed to the Almighty Nature in the form of devatas or the manifest gods. There were duties towards the parents and to the forefathers, and duties towards the other members of the family and to the fellow beings, and duties towards all living creatures and the whole of nature. And this included peace and harmony and non-violence for the whole of cosmos. And that is what we see when all the time the Shanti mantras are recited. So on one level, in this relative field, in the field of gunas, then this concept of duty is also called as swadharma. That means one's own duties to be performed on an everyday basis, and the duties for his work, how he performs in his work or job or career, and his duties towards his wife and children or spouse and children, and the duties of being a citizen, a good citizen to the nation. So when one was dutiful and performing the duties in a proper way, using the four tattvas by which every duty is done, and these four principles were embedded in performing these duties. The first one is sampurti, that means integrity, living with integrity and fulfilling every word and thought you give yourself and to others. And the second is Shraddha, showing authenticity and establishing oneself and developing oneself to the peak of your capabilities, capacities, and try to perform these duties not only the way they are fulfilling to you, but also try to fulfill the expectation of the others and what others expect you to be for them. Then there is the upayanam, which is the responsibility. Upayanam, and it is living and responding to life from the truth that you are the self and you are the self of all, and you are responsible for all happenings in and around you. And then there is the apyayanam, where you are committed to your duties, which is bringing expansion to you and to your life and to everyone around you. That means this expansion of this consciousness and helping the other with their own evolution. And so you are continuously contributing, continuously supporting and enriching, and this is what is apyayanam. And because you are living up to the words, you are true to your words, then naturally the power of the words will be available to you and the Vak Shakti improves. And because you are practicing these duties, performing these duties with the greatest Shraddha, then this Mano Shakti, the power of thinking, and this power of creativity, and this power of intelligence naturally becomes established. And when you take the responsibility for others and for yourself and for everything around you, that means you're also taking responsibility for the environment and for the nature and for the cosmos, because everything goes in this totality, from the smallest to the biggest and from the subtlest to the gross. Then this power of feeling or Prema Shakti becomes established. And so with this Prema Shakti, so naturally then you're able to give so much of this love and bring so much of good feeling to everyone around you. And when you're performing your duties with this Apyayanam of continuously bringing expansion to you and to others, and continuously helping with the evolution of others, then this power of Atma Shakti becomes expressed. So again, performing the duties established in the being and following these tattvas which are prescribed by the scriptures, then one gains a very powerful life. One can lead a very powerful and successful life, and all in the sphere of gaining speedy evolution and complete fulfillment. Finally, the issue of rights only came when the duties were not understood, when the duties were not being performed totally, and only then the issues of the rights came. When one was performing the duties, there was no need of the rights. Nobody needed the rights, they just needed to perform the duties well. So now we have a society where everyone wants rights, but nobody wants responsibility, or nobody wants to perform the duties properly. So here we are now. It's time to change this, and what we have to do is we have to begin with our children and then bring about this greatest transformation for each of us. I end here. Jai Gurudev, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu.